Hey, Bill O'Reilly here. Welcome to the No Spin News for Monday, January 12th, 2026. Stand up for your country. I got a little scratchy throat here. I don't know why. It just comes out of nowhere. But bear with me. I'll get through it in a way that will be clear. If we have to repeat things 5 times, we will. So I want to give you a reminder, because it still is early in 2026. No spin means we don't pander, we don't propagandize, and we don't push ideology. That's what no spin means. It's like we try to analyze the news based on every possible fact we can accumulate. That separates us from almost everybody else. Okay? Because most people have a preconceived, I'm going to say this because that's what my audience wants to hear. We don't do that. All right? And so when we're analyzing very important stories, like the rebellion that's going on now in the United States, we have to gather an enormous amount of information in order to make sense of it all. And I'll prove it again this evening, beginning with the talking points memo. So I wrote a column, posted on BillO'Reilly.com, filed it on Saturday, called The Rebellion. So there are 8 states that are rebelling against the federal government's immigration law. I will list them in a moment. Okay? And what does that mean? It just means they refuse to obey the law. That's a rebellion. This is the sanctuary city movement, but it's more than that. Okay. So on Saturday, you saw one of those states, Minnesota, host a demonstration against the ICE shooting of last week. A couple of thousand people showed up, and there's nothing wrong with people protesting. That's what we do in America when we don't think something is wrong. But this protest was sponsored by a far-left group called the Minnesota Immigration Rights and Action Committee. This was an ideological protest, not an organic protest, okay? It was organized exclusively by the far left to seek people's presence on the far left. That's what this was all about. Okay. Authorities in Minneapolis arrested 29 people, and they were throwing chunks of ice and other debris at the local cops. Feds had no presence here. It's a local demonstration. All right? And one police officer was hurt. That's the who, what, when, where, and why of the rally. The people who attended the rally are in one category. They are leftists who hate the Trump administration. Roll the tape.
It was another instance of someone in our city being killed, being murdered by law enforcement, and I'm ready to be done with it.
I love my community, I love my city, and I hate what's happening to it with people who frankly aren't from here coming in and telling us who should be here. And when it comes down to loving my neighbor, I'm just going to love my neighbor.
Here's ICE riding through our neighborhoods, destroying families, destroying businesses, tearing our communities apart, and they're not being held accountable. And that's why we're here. We're out here to demonstrate, to try to hold them accountable.
Okay, fine. But that's not what really that is. That is an open border. We don't want any law enforcement to confront undocumented migrants. We don't want it. You let them in, they do what they want. That's what these people stand for, but they're never honest about it. That shouldn't be a surprise. 75 million people voted for Kamala Harris, who supported President Biden's open border policy and didn't want any law enforcement against people, foreign nationals, who came into the country illegally. Kamala Harris wouldn't have done anything. Would have continued on the open border and let people just wave on in. Okay? 75 million Americans voted for her. A lot of folks. So of course you're going to have that. Now, the 8 states in open rebellion are these: California, Oregon, Washington State, Colorado, Minnesota, Illinois, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. New York and Vermont are right on the edge there. I don't have them on there because there's a dialogue, at least, going on with Washington, but you can put them on there. And when you have 10 states, it's basically telling the federal government, we're not going to obey your law. You have what they had before the Civil War. It's exactly the same thing. And I make the point in the column that from 1830 to 1860, 30 years, Southern states said, we're not going to obey whatever you say. And we're not just talking slavery, we're talking tariffs, we're talking almost everything. Andrew Jackson slapped them down. Okay? But then we had a series of weak presidents like Franklin Pierce and James Buchanan who let the South rise in ferocity. And then we had the Civil War. That was a rebellion against the federal government. Only other time in our history we've seen this was during the Vietnam War. But that was a populist uprising. Started out ideological, but then the war got out of control because of Lyndon Johnson's incompetency and deceit. And the American people, and that just cut across almost every barrier, said enough of this. And the demonstrations happened. And violence happened. Kent State, National Guard, and a lot of other areas. Now, the federal government at this point has a couple of obligations. Has to enforce the law. Has to. But they can de-escalate violent confrontations. So if ICE agents see that there's a person like Ms. Good impeding their investigation with an automobile, the vehicle, then you de-escalate that. You arrest her later, which they could have done easily. All right? You don't up it, because if there's a lot more violence, then the Trump administration is going to lose the country. It's going to. You got to de-escalate in any kind of potential violent situation. Now, that doesn't mean if the ICE agents are attacked that they can't fight back. They should fight back. I'm not saying that. But if you can lessen potential violence, you have to do that. And that's not just me saying it, that's every law enforcement agency in a country has that in their manual. Okay, if you don't have to use lethal force, you don't. Get it later. Do it later. Now, that's number one. Number two, 77 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. And that vote needs to be respected. It's not respected by the left. Okay, it's not. And it's probably a vice versa on that too. But when 77 million Americans say we want immigration law enforced, you got to enforce it. The Trump administration is not doing anything wrong theoretically. Okay? But the ICE commanders have got to know that there's a volatile situation. Because if it gets worse, the Democrats are going to win the midterms. And they're making their stand not on the economy now, because the economy is pretty good. They're making their stand on this. This is the hill they're standing on. Illegal immigration. I think that's foolish. I believe most Americans see this Minnesota stuff for what it is. A provocation of the federal government, a rebellion against social order. I believe most of us see that. And the Democratic Party is standing opposed to that. It's going to hurt them, particularly because it's a weak party with no leader. But if you are calling ICE Gestapo and you are supporting open borders and no supervision of foreign nationals, and you won't even cooperate in the 10 states that I mentioned with criminal migrant investigations. You wouldn't even cooperate then. America's going to walk away from you, in my opinion. Summing up, the federal government has to enforce immigration law, but it has to be done a little bit differently now. Situation is just too volatile. We don't want dead people. Yeah. But we do want people held accountable. And that's a memo. If you had one holiday wish, would you wish to be debt-free? Well, I may have a solution for you. Before year end, credit card and loan companies close out their books, meaning lenders might be able to open negotiations, which gives you leverage. And Done with Debt knows how to use that to negotiate hard on your behalf. They monitor lender trends and pressures to help you escape from crushing debt without bankruptcy or new loans. From month one, Done with Debt works to reduce your total debt, leave you with more money every month. Start now because your leverage may disappear at year end. Chat for free with a Done with Debt specialist at donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. And don't forget to tell them O'Reilly sent you. Let's go to the Clintons, Bill and Hillary. They've been asked to testify in front of the House Oversight Committee tomorrow and Wednesday, the president tomorrow and the former Secretary of State on Wednesday. They're not going to show up. I'll be stunned if they show up. So what happens then? The Oversight Committee, James Comer, says, we want your depositions, closed or private, about Epstein. Why? Because Bill Clinton took 26 trips aboard Epstein's plane, a lot of them in conjunction with the Clinton Foundation, which Hillary Clinton is a chief officer of. That's why. That's legit, I think, right? So they're supposed to show up, but they're not going to show up. And then what happens? Joining us now from Washington is lawyer Bob Driscoll. He is a partner in Dickinson and Wright. He's very well experienced in these matters. So we have a frame of reference with Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon. Both defied subpoenas to appear before Congress, and both were sent to prison because of it, correct?
Yes. They both blew off their subpoenas completely. There was a referral to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice prosecuted both of them and gained convictions. In both cases went up on appeal, and both convictions were upheld. Okay,
so that was Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, the president. And they put them in the jail, and Navarro and Bannon both said, okay, I'm willing to do the time. Now, that's not going to happen with Bill and Hillary Clinton, is it?
I wouldn't be so sure. I think it could happen.
Do you think the sitting president, a former president of the United States, is going to get sentenced to prison because he won't show up and testify?
I think there's a chance. I think that the precedent is there. The better approach for him to take would be to show up and object if they can object to specific questions as harassing, as irrelevant, as simply asking embarrassing questions for the sake of that. But the ability of Congress to issue subpoenas is pretty well established. There are limited circumstances where courts have held that Congress has gone too far. But I think that he's in better shape to protect himself by either showing up and objecting to the questions, having his lawyer object to the questions he thinks go too far, he doesn't want to answer, or by filing suit immediately before he's supposed to show up and trying to challenge the subpoena in a federal court in Washington.
So
but to just blow off the subpoena puts him at risk of being held in contempt, because the committee can hold him in contempt, refer to the whole House to hold him in contempt, and then the House would vote to hold him in contempt and make a referral to the Department of Justice.
Yeah, the House is so close, though, it might not, he might not get, he might not lose. But even if they don't show up this week, and Are you thinking they're going to show up tomorrow and Wednesday?
My guess would be that they will either show up or they will file suit in D.C. to try to challenge the subpoena and drag it out in litigation.
Okay.
I just think it's too big a risk to not show up at all. The case law is pretty clear that the courts do not like it if you blow off a subpoena completely. If there's a dispute over what you say when you're there, okay.
No, I got it, but there's no, tomorrow we looked at the House oversight schedule, there's nothing on it. The subpoena still stands. Yeah. So I understand, though, that they would have a second chance. They would get warned by Comer, and if they don't come next time or whatever, then they're going to get it. Will they give them a second chance if they don't show up this week?
Typically, the way this would work and the way the chances he would get is the committee would schedule a vote to vote on contempt. And presumably he could cure his contempt by saying he would show up before they took that vote. After that, the whole House could vote. The other thing that's happened this year that's a new development in this area of law is Jim Jordan made a referral of a witness before his committee straight to the Department of Justice for obstruction. When he didn't like he thought the witness was too obstreperous and wouldn't answer the questions, and he made a straight referral to the Department of Justice without going through contempt hearing. So I just think there's a lot of risk for the former president and the former first lady to not show up at all. They've got experienced counsel. I'm sure they're looking at all of this. But I mean, I wouldn't bank on him. If there were a Democratic DOJ, okay, great. They would probably be open to hearing that this is a harassing subpoena. It doesn't have to do with the merits and all.
That's going to be very tough when you're on a plane.
This DOJ, they're not going to want to hear that.
No,
and I think that. They're going to be
that's partisan.
Sore over the Bannon case, and they're going to say, "Look, if our guy had to go to jail, so do you."
That's partisan, though. It'll, as you know, go beyond it'll go into the federal court system. And if you are on Epstein's plane 26 times under the banner of the Clinton Foundation, you got to answer questions about that. So the courts are going to go. It's a legitimate line of questioning. This isn't something just to embarrass the Clintons. Last word.
I think not showing up puts him in the worst position because his argument there is there's not one relevant question I could be asked. And that's clearly not true. The better course for him is to show up and answer what is fairly asked and object if he thinks they're trying to make a spectacle of it or asking inappropriate questions just for the sake of exposing personal flaws he may have.
Okay.
But I think not showing up is not a great idea for him, and I think he's at risk if he doesn't do it.
All right. Well, we're obviously on it. Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate your time very much. All right, overseas, Iran. So all of the internet is down. Very hard to get anything out of there. There are pictures of the demonstrations. They've been going on since December 28th. Government's tottering, no question about that. I did talk to President Trump about this over the weekend. And I don't like to, it's a private conversation, but I can report that my take on it is that U.S. doesn't do military action unless it would be decisive. So if there's a tip that would get rid of the mullahs, who are obviously murderers, they killed between 500 and 1,000 people already, according to the rights organizations, the human rights organizations. So there's a tip that you can use military to bomb something or do something to get them out of there, I support that. But just a random, no. I think it's going to go, but boy, it's slow because that police state is tight. It's not as tight as Cuba, okay? Cuba, but the people there are starving now. And there's no oil going in, so that means they can't cool off their homes, they can't cook their food, they're going to go. But Cuba is actually a tighter police state than Iran because of the size. It's easy to regulate the island of Cuba. It's not easy to regulate a big country like Iran. But both of them may go in the next few weeks, which is just, and that's what the conversation between the president and myself was all about, the new realignment of the world, which is taking place. Greenland. So this one isn't nearly at the level of Venezuela, Cuba, or Iran. This is a matter of military bases and mineral rights. Okay. I think the Secretary of State Rubio is doing an excellent job. And I have somebody in there very close. He's not going to support military action, Rubio. He's not. Because two things would happen. The American public would turn against the entire Republican Party and Trump administration. It's never going to happen that Americans are going to support military action against Greenland, ever. And number two, you can get the same thing you want by negotiation. Because the Danes, they don't have a lot of emotion invested in Greenland, okay? Make a deal. And there are supposed to be meetings this week in Washington between the Danish government, which oversees Greenland, and Secretary of State Rubio. So I'm just praying, and I use that word literally, they work it out. The cost of everything still rising, and many of us are relying on credit cards to cover essentials. If that debt is piling up, you're not alone. Americans now owe more than $1 trillion in credit card debt. You may have thought about calling American Financing, but hesitated because you don't want to lose your low mortgage rate. Well, good news, they created the Smart Equity Loan. It lets you tap into your home's equity without touching your current mortgage. Unlike a home equity line of credit, this loan has a fixed interest rate and one predictable monthly payment. No upfront or hidden fees. It only takes 10 minutes to get started, so please call 888-462-9557 or visit americanfinancing.net/bill. You've heard me talk about All Family Pharmacy before, and I'll keep talking about them because they are truly doing things right. They're fast, reliable, and they care about getting people the meds they need without all the runaround. When you don't want to wait in line and would rather get your meds delivered to your door, you need All Family Pharmacy. When everyone around you is sick and you want to be prepared, you need All Family Pharmacy. And when your doctor says they will not prescribe ivermectin, you need All Family Pharmacy. They've got everything: antibiotics, antivirals, Tamiflu, blood pressure meds, more. Order online. Once approved by the doctors, your medication ships straight to your door. Be prepared for whatever this new year brings. Please visit allfamilypharmacy.com/bill. Use the code BILL10 to save 10%. All right, here's the final thought of the day. Watching the Islanders, my favorite hockey team, and this happened. Roll the tape.
Schaefer had his stick snapped and quickly was handed a stick. And now racing to the bench is Heineman to pick up a new twig. As he quickly handed his off to Schaefer. Barzal has it. And a puck floats off his stick, so the zone cleared by the factor. And that is Ryan O'Reilly. He is so good, they just call him the O'Reilly factor, right? He impacts every player he seems to play with.
That's right. That was his nickname in St. Louis. His teammates gave him that. They call him the, not the factor. That's a huge, huge compliment. And he certainly won the Conn Smythe. He's played international for Canada, Stanley Cup winner in St. Louis as the captain. He's earned that nickname.
Well, it's a compliment to us, that's for sure. And Ryan O'Reilly is a tremendous player. I got a call from Dennis Miller years back when he was at a St. Louis Blues game and Ryan O'Reilly was playing for the Blues. He said, hey, they're all chanting the factor when Ryan O'Reilly comes out. So thank you. That's all I can say. It's a nice compliment when you go Islanders, second place. Come on, we're watching them. Thank you for watching and listening to the First Place No Spin News. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching. To view full episodes of the No Spin News anytime, sign up to become a BillO'Reilly.com premium or concierge member today.